On June 6, 1944, at 6:30 a.m., the first wave hit Omaha Beach with a 96% casualty rate in some companies. By every tactical calculation, the assault should have collapsed within 17 minutes. At 6:30 a.m. on June 6, 1944, the landing craft approached Omaha Beach, Normandy, France, cutting through a sea state of force 3 to 4 with waves rising 4 to 6 feet. Visibility through the coastal haze extends only 400 yards, and the water temperature sits at 54 degrees Fahrenheit. The boats are still 5,000 yards from shore, nearly 3 miles of open water between them and the beach. The landing craft, LCVP's landing craft vehicle personnel, Higgins boats, cut through the chop at 8 knots. Each boat carries 31 men. Weight per man, 68 pounds of equipment. M1 Garand rifle, 9.5 pounds. 80 rounds of .3006 ammunition, 5 pounds. Entrenching tool, gas mask, rations, grenades, wool uniform soaked with seawater. Some men carry more. Demolition men carry 40-pound satchel charges. Flamethrower operators carry 68-pound M2 flamethrowers. Browning automatic rifle gunners carry 19.4-pound weapons plus 12 magazines, another 7 pounds. The men belong to the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One, and the 29th Infantry Division. Veterans and recruits mixed. The 1st Division fought in North Africa and Sicily. The 29th Division has never seen combat. They've been briefed that beach defenses are moderate. Intelligence estimates: 1 regiment, the 716th Static Infantry Division. Undermanned and composed largely of OSS battalions, Soviet prisoners pressed into German service. Old men and conscripts, the briefing calls them low-quality troops with limited combat effectiveness. The briefing is wrong. The 352nd Infantry Division moved into position behind Omaha Beach on March 15, 1944. This is a frontline combat division. 3 regiments, the 914th, 915th, and 916th Grenadier Regiments. Total strength, approximately 12,000 men. They are not old. Average age, 24. They are not poorly trained. Many are veterans of the Eastern Front. They've spent 11 weeks fortifying Omaha Beach. Allied intelligence missed them. Aerial reconnaissance photographed the beach defenses, but couldn't distinguish between the 716th Static Division and the 352nd Infantry Division. The uniforms looked the same from 20,000 feet. Radio intercepts suggested reinforcements, but analysts classified them as possible rather than confirmed. The intelligence estimate delivered to V Corps headquarters on May 28 lists Omaha Beach as resistance, moderate. Defending forces, approximately 3 battalions, quality low. The actual defending force, 7 battalions, quality high. At 6:27 a.m., 3 minutes before H-hour, the naval bombardment lifts. 14 battleships, cruisers, and destroyers have fired 2,876 tons of shells at the bluffs over the past 40 minutes. USS Texas fires 14-inch shells, each weighing 1,500 pounds. USS Arkansas fires 12-inch shells. The cruisers, HMS Glasgow, USS Tuscaloosa, USS Quincy, fire 8-inch and 6-inch shells. Destroyers close to 5,000 yards and fire 5-inch shells at pillboxes. The shells hit the bluffs. They throw up earth and smoke. They sound devastating from the landing craft, but most shells land on the reverse slope or detonate in open ground. The concrete casemates, walls 3 to 6 feet thick, reinforced with steel, take hits and survive. The open machine gun positions, Tobruk pits, circular concrete emplacements sunk into the ground, are untouched. The bunkers have overlapping fields of fire. Destroying one doesn't blind the others. The bombers, 329 B-24 Liberators of the 8th Air Force attacked at dawn. 5:50 a.m. They carried 13,000 bombs, 500-pounders and 250-pounders. Cloud cover over the beach forced them to rely on instruments. The bombardiers delayed release by 5 to 30 seconds to avoid hitting the landing craft below. Every bomb lands between 1 and 3 miles inland. Farmers' fields erupt, cows die. The beach defenses are untouched. At 6:29 a.m., Sergeant Raymond Strojny, Company A, 116th Infantry Regiment, 29th Division, stands in the lead boat approaching Dog Green sector. He is 28 years old, from Pennsylvania. He's been in the Army for 3 years. He can see the shoreline now through the haze. The bluffs rise 100 to 170 feet above the beach, dark and imposing against the pale morning sky. He counts pillboxes along the ridge. He counts 8. The briefing showed 4. He turns to Lieutenant Edward Gearing, age 23, and says, "Sir, that doesn't look moderate." Gearing, standing at the front of the boat near the ramp, says nothing. He's staring at the beach. His jaw is tight. At 6:30 a.m. the ramp drops. The beach is 300 yards wide at low tide. Tidal range, 18 feet. The planners chose low tide to expose obstacles: Belgian gates, Czech hedgehogs, Element C steel ramps designed to rip hulls. Tellerman 42 anti-tank mines are wired to posts. Over 3,700 obstacles sit between the high and low water marks, arranged in 3 belts. The first belt sits at the low water line. The second belt sits 100 yards up. The third belt sits 50 yards from the seawall. Naval engineers studied photographs for months to plot safe lanes, but the tides are stronger than predicted. Boats drift east. Company A, supposed to land on Dog Green, lands 200 yards east. Company E lands 400 yards west of its target. The first men step off into 5 feet of water. Private First Class Leo Nash, Company A, steps off the ramp and disappears under the surface. His rifle pulls him down. He drops it and claws for the surface. He breaks into air and swims toward shore. Machine gun fire stitches the water around him. He doesn't know if he's hit. The water is so cold he can't feel his legs. MG-42 machine guns open from 9 major positions along the bluffs and additional positions in the draws. Rate of fire: 1,200 rounds per minute, 20 rounds per second. Effective range: 2,000 yards. Maximum range: 3,500 yards. The guns are sighted to create interlocking fields of fire using pre-plotted firing stakes. Every square meter of the beach is covered. The gunners don't aim at individual soldiers. They aim at grid squares. They fire in 50-round bursts, 3 seconds of fire, 2 seconds to change the belt. The sound is a ripping canvas, continuous and mechanical. This is not suppressive fire. This is enfilade, grazing fire at a 10-degree angle, cutting men at the knees, the waist, the chest. The bullets skip off the water like stones. Tracers every 5th round paint red lines through the haze. Company A, 116th Infantry Regiment, lands on Dog Green sector at 6:30 a.m. The sector is 400 yards wide. It is directly in front of Wider Stance Nest 71, Resistance Nest 71, a fortified complex with 3 machine guns, 1 50mm anti-tank gun, 1 81 mortar, and 32 infantry. The lead boat hits a sandbar 80 yards from shore. The ramp drops. Lieutenant Gearing steps off and is hit in the head. He's dead before he falls into the water. Sergeant Strojny steps off and is hit in the chest and stomach. He makes it 3 steps and collapses. The water around the boat turns red. 31 men on that boat. 6 reach the beach. None reach the seawall. Company A loses 96% of its effective strength in the first 7 minutes. Not wounded, not pinned. Gone. Out of 197 men in Company A, 19 are killed outright in the water. 87 are wounded in the first 10 minutes. 35 drown. 56 survive unwounded but are scattered across 600 yards of beach. They belong to no coherent unit. Company E, 16th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division, lands on Easy Red Sector at 6:32 a.m. This sector is 500 yards wide. The company lands under fire from Widerstandsonist 62 and Widerstandsonist 61. Captain Edward Wozinski leads the company. The boat takes machine gun fire while the ramp is still up. Rounds punch through the plywood sides. 3 men are hit before the ramp drops. Wozinski is the first man off. He makes it 40 yards before he's hit in the leg. He keeps moving. He reaches a wooden obstacle, a ramp designed to stop landing craft, and collapses behind it. Medic strips his pants and packs the wound. Wozinski pulls out his map. The map is soaked and tearing apart. He can't read the grid coordinates. Company E takes 45% casualties in the first 15 minutes. But they reach the shingle, a steep embankment of fist-sized stones that runs along the beach 50 yards below the seawall. The shingle offers cover from direct fire. Men pile up behind it. Some are wounded, most are not. They are frozen. The sound is overwhelming. Machine guns, mortars, artillery, naval gunfire from behind. Bombers overhead on second-wave runs. Men scream for medics. Some scream for their mothers. Some don't scream, they stare at nothing. The plan calls for 32 DD tanks, duplex-drive Shermans, to land ahead of the infantry and provide covering fire. The DD tank is a standard M4A1 Sherman fitted with a collapsible canvas flotation screen and twin propellers. Displacement, 66,000 pounds. Freeboard 3 feet, the height of the tank above the waterline when floating. Maximum safe sea state, force 2. Current sea state, force 3 to 4. The tanks launch from LCTs, landing craft tank, at 6:00 a.m., 6,000 yards offshore. This is twice the planned distance, but the Navy coxswains are afraid of hitting obstacles. The tanks drop off the ramps into 10-foot swells. The flotation screens are designed for calm water. In rough seas, water pours over the top. Bilge pumps can't keep up. The tanks sink. 27 of 32 tanks sink within minutes. Crews scramble out of hatches as the tanks go under. Some make it, some don't. Tank crews wear life vests, but the vests don't help if you're trapped inside. 5 tanks from the 741st Tank Battalion sink with all hands. 20 men drowned. The 743rd Tank Battalion commander, seeing the disaster, orders his LCTs to beach directly and unload on the sand. 5 tanks make it to shore on Easy Red Sector. None make it to Dog Green, Dog White, or Dog Red. Without armor, the infantry has no suppression. The plan assumed tanks would engage pillboxes at 800 to 1,200 yards with 75 main guns and .30 caliber coaxial machine guns. The tanks would advance with the infantry, firing and moving. The German defenders would be forced to button up, close their firing ports, or be destroyed. But there are no tanks. The German gunners fire uninterrupted. At 6:33 a.m. the engineers land. 16-man teams from the 146th Engineer Combat Battalion, 299th Engineer Combat Battalion, and 112th Engineer Combat Battalion. Their job: blow gaps in the obstacles to allow follow-on landing craft to beach safely. Each team carries 2,880 pounds of explosives, TNT blocks, composition C2, primacord blasting caps, M1 fuse lighters. They also carry pole charges, 8 pounds of TNT on the end of a wooden pole for attacking concrete fortifications. The engineers are supposed to work under covering fire from infantry and tanks. There is no covering fire. The infantry is pinned or dead. The tanks are gone. German mortars, 8 cm Granitwerfer 34, bracket the waterline with precision. Each mortar can fire 15 rounds per minute to a range of 2,625 yards. The German forward observers have pre-plotted target coordinates for every meter of beach. They don't need to see the engineers. They fire on schedule. Mortar shells air-burst above the obstacles. Shrapnel cuts through canvas, wood, flesh. Engineers work in teams of 4. One man places the charge. One man unrolls primacord. One man attaches the fuse. One man lights it. They have 90 seconds to arm and clear. Some teams finish. Some don't. Explosions ripple across the beach, planned demolitions and premature detonations. The engineers take 41% casualties in the first 30 minutes. Out of 272 engineers in the first wave, 111 are killed or wounded by 7:00 a.m. They manage to blow 6 partial gaps in the obstacles. The plan called for 16 gaps. Follow-on waves still hit obstacles. Landing craft hang up on steel stakes. Some back off and try again. Some flood and sink. Some disgorge men into deep water. At 6:40 a.m., no one has crossed the seawall. The seawall is a concrete and stone barrier, 4 feet high, running along the eastern half of Omaha Beach. On the western half, there is no seawall, just a steep shingle bank that serves the same function. Both provide cover from direct machine gun fire but not from mortars or plunging artillery fire. The beach is now covered with men in a band 50 yards deep from the waterline. Some are dead. Some are wounded. Most are alive but immobile. They lie behind obstacles and shell craters pressed flat against the sand. Officers shout orders that no one follows. Sergeants try to organize fire teams. No one moves. The reason is mathematical. To cross 200 yards of open beach under MG-42 fire takes approximately 90 seconds at a sprint. The human body under stress moves at 6 to 8 miles per hour, about 10 feet per second. In 90 seconds, an MG-42 fires 1,800 rounds. With 9 machine guns covering the beach, that's 16,200 rounds in the air during a single crossing attempt. Even if only 1% of those rounds hit, that's 162 hits. There are only 1,450 men in the first wave. The soldiers don't calculate this consciously, but they understand it instinctively. Staying still keeps you alive for now. Moving forward kills you in 90 seconds, so they stay. At 6:45 a.m. the second wave lands. 8 more companies, 1,450 men. They land on top of the first wave. Boats ground on bodies. Men wade through debris and corpses. They reach the shingle and the seawall and stop. Now there are 2,000 men pinned in a strip 300 yards wide and 50 yards deep. The density is catastrophic. German mortars don't need to aim. They fire into the grid square and hit something. At 7:00 a.m., Major General Leonard Jarrow, commanding V Corps, sits aboard USS Ancon 12 miles offshore. He receives reports by radio from observers in small craft closer to shore. The reports are fragmentary and contradictory. One report, troops advancing inland. Another report, heavy casualties, little progress. Another, beach obstructed, request naval gunfire. Jarrow has a decision to make. The third wave, 10,000 men and vehicles, is scheduled to land at 7:30 a.m. If he sends them in now, they'll land on top of the chaos. If he holds them offshore, he loses the timetable. The plan calls for 20,000 men ashore by 9:00 a.m. and the bluff secured by noon. He's already behind. At 7:05 a.m., Jarrow orders the third wave to proceed. He has no choice. The schedule is built on momentum. Stopping loses the invasion. Brigadier General Norman Cota, 51 years old, Assistant Division Commander of the 29th Infantry Division, lands at 7:30 a.m. on WWII Beach. His boat, LCVP-71, takes machine gun fire during the approach. The coxswain tries to turn back. Coda pulls his .45 caliber M1911 pistol and tells him to beach the boat or he'll shoot him. The coxswain beaches the boat. Coda is the first man off. He wears no helmet. He wears a knit cap, dark wool, pulled low. He wears colonel's eagles on his collar. He was promoted to brigadier general 2 weeks prior, but hasn't updated his insignia. Some accounts say this is modesty. More likely it's logistics. New stars hadn't arrived. He carries a .45 pistol in a hip holster and nothing else. No rifle, no pack, no gas mask. He walks upright while men around him crawl. Coda is not West Point. He's Pennsylvania National Guard, commissioned in 1917. He fought in World War I as a lieutenant. Between the wars, he taught at the infantry school at Fort Benning. He's known as a tactician, not a frontline officer, but he volunteered for the assault wave. His assigned role is to follow behind the first wave and coordinate the advance once the beach is secured. The beach is not secured. Men are pressed against the seawall. Some are wounded. Most are not. They are frozen. Coda walks the length of the wall. He does not crouch. He asks questions. What unit are you? Who's your co? Where are your sergeants? Most men don't answer. Some point to bodies. One soldier, Private First Class Charles Hangsterfer, Company C, 116th Infantry, says, "Sir, we can't move. They'll kill us." Coda looks at him and says, "Then you're already dead. Move." Coda stops at a cluster of men from the 5th Ranger Battalion. The Rangers, 3 companies, 450 men, were supposed to land at Point du Hoc, 3 miles west, and scale 100-foot cliffs to destroy coastal artillery. But their boats drifted in the current. Half the battalion is here by accident. They have no assigned mission on Omaha Beach. They're sitting at the seawall waiting for orders. Coda identifies them by their Ranger shoulder patches. He walks over. Rangers lead the way. The phrase becomes the Ranger motto, but in the moment it's not inspiration. It's an order. Coda pulls a Bangalore torpedo from a dead engineer. The Bangalore is a 5-foot steel tube packed with 10 pounds of TNT. Multiple sections screw together to create lengths up to 30 feet. You push it under obstacles or wire, attach a fuse, light it, and run. Coda screws 2 sections together, 10 feet. He pushes it under a barbed wire entanglement at the base of the bluff. He lights the fuse with an M1 fuse lighter. He walks away. Men scramble back. The explosion blows a gap 6 feet wide. Coda steps through. The Rangers follow. At 7:50 a.m., Coda and approximately 50 Rangers reach the base of the bluff at the D1 draw, the Vierville exit, one of 5 ravines cutting through the bluffs. The slope is 45 degrees, loose shale and clay. Visibility at the top, 0. Smoke from grass fires started by naval shells drifts across the ridge. They don't know what's up there. Doctrine says you don't climb an uncleared slope under enemy observation. Doctrine also says you don't stay on a beach under enfilade fire. Coda climbs. The Rangers climb. 50 men spread across a 30-yard front, moving in pairs. One man moves, the other covers. At 8:00 a.m. they reach the ridgeline. Coda is breathing hard. He's 51 and carrying 20 extra pounds around the middle. The Rangers fan out. 30 yards inland, they see a concrete casemate, wider stanceonist 71. The same position that killed Company A on the beach below. The casemate is a reinforced concrete box, 12 feet by 12 feet, walls 3 feet thick with an embrasure, a firing slit facing the beach. An MG-42 is sighted in the embrasure. The gun is firing down at the beach. The crew hasn't seen the Americans yet. Staff Sergeant William Courtney, age 24, 5th Rangers from Ohio, carries an M1 carbine and 6 Mk2 fragmentation grenades. He signals two other Rangers, Corporal Frank Peregrine and Private William Dillon. They move forward in a shallow drainage ditch that provides defilade, cover from observation. They get within 20 yards before the Germans see them. The MG-42 swings toward them. Courtney runs. He covers 20 yards in 3 seconds. The MG-42 fires. Rounds snap past his head, his shoulder. He throws 2 grenades. The first hits the front of the casemate and bounces off. The second enters the embrasure. The explosion is muffled inside the concrete box. The gun stops. Courtney is hit in the left leg and right shoulder. He collapses 10 feet from the casemate. Peregrine and Dillon rush forward. They throw grenades through the embrasure and the rear door. The position is neutralized. 4 Germans dead, 3 wounded. Courtney is dragged back to cover. Medic ties off the leg wound, femoral artery intact. Shoulder wound is through and through, no bone damage. Courtney survives and receives the Silver Star. The Germans in adjacent positions now know the Americans are on the ridge. Mortar fire begins landing on the crest. Small arms fire from positions 100 to 200 yards east and west. The Rangers take cover in shell craters and behind hedgerows. Coda consolidates the perimeter. He counts heads, 41 Rangers still effective, 9 wounded, none dead yet. He sends a runner, Private Leo Lasky, back down the bluff to the beach with a message. Route confirmed up D1 draw. Need reinforcements and engineers with explosives. Lasky makes it halfway down the slope before he's hit by machine gun fire from a flanking position. He's killed instantly. The message doesn't arrive. Coda doesn't know this. He assumes reinforcements are coming. He pushes inland with the Rangers. At 8:13 a.m., other small groups begin breaching the bluffs at different points. Company E, 16th Infantry, climbs the slope at the E1 draw. The Colville exit, led by Captain Edward Wozenski, wounded but still moving. Company G, 16th Infantry, breaches at E3, a steep ravine with no road. Company F, 16th Infantry, reaches the top near Fox Green sector on the eastern end of the beach. None of these groups know about the others. No radios work. Most SCR 300 backpack radios, 31 pounds, effective range 3 miles, drowned in the water or were smashed by shrapnel. The SCR 536 handheld radios, 5 pounds, effective range 1 mile, have dead batteries or damaged antennas. Communication is by runner. Runners move across open ground under fire. The survival rate is approximately 40%. At 8:30 a.m., Lieutenant John Spaulding, Company E, 16th Infantry, reaches a hedgerow 200 yards inland from the bluff crest. He has 32 men with him, survivors from his platoon and stragglers from other units. He doesn't know where he is. His map is gone. He navigates by terrain and the position of the sun. He knows the beach is north and the objective, the village of Colville-sur-Mer, is south. He keeps moving south. At 8:45 a.m., Spaulding's group encounters a German patrol. 6 men from the 916th Grenadier Regiment moving north toward the beach. Both groups are surprised. Firefight at 30 yards. 2 Americans hit, 1 killed. 4 Germans killed, 2 surrender. The Germans are carrying stick grenades, Model 24 Steelhand and Carabiner 98K rifles. 1 German, a corporal, speaks broken English. Spaulding interrogates him. The corporal says his company, approximately 120 men, is dug in around Colville. He says reinforcements arrived 2 days ago. He says the Americans will be pushed back into the sea by noon. Spaulding takes the 2 prisoners and keeps moving. At 9:00 a.m., he reaches a stone farmhouse 600 yards inland. The farmhouse is abandoned. He sets up a defensive position. He sends a runner back toward the beach to report his location. The runner is Private James Kelly, age 19, from Boston. Kelly makes it 100 yards before he's killed by mortar fire. Spaulding doesn't know. He waits for reinforcements that don't come. At 9:10 a.m., Brigadier General Coda and the Rangers encounter their first counterattack. They're holding a hedgerow 400 yards inland from the bluff. Normandy hedgerows, bocage, are not bushes. They are earth embankments 4 to 6 feet high, topped with dense hawthorn and bramble centuries old. Each field is a natural fortress. Visibility, 20 yards. The Germans attack from 3 sides, north, east, and west, using the hedgerows for cover. Approximately 60 Germans from the 916th Grenadier Regiment, supported by 2 MG-42 teams. The Rangers are outnumbered but have superior firepower in close quarters. M1 Garand rifles fire 8-round clips as fast as you can pull the trigger. Effective range, 500 yards but lethal at 50 yards. Browning automatic rifles, bars, fire .3006 rounds at 550 rounds per minute from 20-round magazines. The Germans have bolt-action Kar 98K rifles, 5-round internal magazines, 15 rounds per minute per rifleman. Their MG-42s are devastating but require setup time and ammunition bearers. The firefight lasts 18 minutes. Germans advance to within 10 yards of the Ranger line before falling back. Coda is grazed by shrapnel across the ribs, uniform torn, skin bleeding, ribs intact. He doesn't leave. He crawls along the hedgerow directing fire. Sergeant Clayton Wise, 5th Rangers, is killed by a rifle grenade, Skispetcher rifle grenade launched from a Kar 98K. The grenade lands in his foxhole and detonates. Wise dies instantly. At 9:28 a.m., a Navy destroyer, USS McCook, Fletcher class, commissioned 1943, receives a shore fire control party radio call. The call comes from a Navy ensign, Victor Hicken, attached to the Rangers. Hicken survived the landing and climbed the bluff with Coda. His radio, an SCR-284, 80 pounds, carried by 2 men, is the only working radio on that section of the beach. Hicken calls in coordinates. Grid reference 592,847. He requests fire 150 yards north of American positions. McCook confirms. 4 minutes later, the first salvo, 3 5-inch shells, lands 200 yards north of Coda's position. Hicken adjusts. Drop 50, repeat. The second salvo lands 150 yards out. The third salvo lands directly on the German attack line. The German attack breaks. Survivors retreat south through the bocage. By 9:35 a.m. the counterattack is over. Cost, 14 Rangers killed, 23 wounded. German losses, estimated 40 to 50 killed or wounded based on body count and blood trails. The Rangers hold the hedgerow. At 10:00 a.m., Colonel George Taylor, 50 years old, commander of the 16th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division, lands on Easy Red Beach. Taylor is a West Point graduate, class of 1918. He commanded a battalion in North Africa and Sicily. He's supposed to land at H+60, 7:30 a.m., but his boat circled offshore for 90 minutes due to congestion and obstacles. He's 3.5 hours late. He steps off the ramp into 2 feet of water and walks up the beach. Bodies lie in rows at the waterline. Wounded men sit against the seawall waiting for evacuation. Engineers blow obstacles with satchel charges, explosions every few minutes. German mortars still fall intermittently. A shell lands 30 yards from Taylor. He doesn't flinch. Men are still pinned at the seawall, hundreds of them. Some are from his regiment, some are from other units. They're mixed together, no unit cohesion. Taylor sees lieutenants sitting with enlisted men doing nothing. He sees sergeants lying flat, staring at the sky. He walks along the seawall shouting. His voice is recorded by multiple witnesses and appears in after-action reports. He says, "Two kinds of people are staying on this beach, those who are dead and those who are going to die. Now let's get the hell out of here." Men move, not all of them, not immediately, but enough. A sergeant from Company L stands up, then another, then a lieutenant. Groups of 5 and 10 men get up and run for the bluff. Some are cut down by machine gun fire from positions still active, but most make it. The seawall empties in waves. By 10:30 a.m., the density at the seawall drops from critical to manageable. At 10:15 a.m., engineers from the 37th and 149th Engineer Combat Battalions blow 6 more gaps in the wire along Easy Red and Fox Green sectors. They use Bangalore torpedoes and Composition C2 plastic explosive. The gaps are marked with white tape and orange panels. Infantry pour through. By 10:30 a.m., over 1,000 men are climbing the bluffs at 5 different points. At 10:35 a.m., the first vehicles reach the top of the bluff via the E1 draw. 2 M4 Sherman tanks from the 741st Tank Battalion and 3 M3 half-tracks from the 1st Infantry Division's Cannon Company. The half-tracks carry M2 Browning .50 caliber heavy machine guns. Rate of fire, 450 to 600 rounds per minute. Effective range, 1,800 yards. The .50 caliber round, 12, 7x99 mm, punches through sandbags, wood, and thin steel. The half-tracks take up positions on the ridge and suppress German strongpoints at 800 yards. The Shermans engage pillboxes with 75 mm3 guns. The 75 fires high-explosive shells and armor-piercing rounds. Against concrete, he is more effective. The blast creates spalling inside the casemate, killing or wounding crews even without penetration. One Sherman fires 11 rounds into Wider Stantonist 62, the strongpoint overlooking Easy Red. The casemate cracks. The crew abandons it. American infantry move in and capture 4 Germans, 3 wounded, 1 unharmed but in shock. By 11:00 a.m., American forces hold a perimeter approximately 1 mile wide and 1,000 yards deep. It is not a continuous line. It is a series of strong points held by company and platoon-sized elements, 40 to 150 men each. Gaps exist everywhere. Some gaps are 500 yards wide. German patrols move through the gaps. They ambush American supply parties. They snipe at officers, but they don't counterattack in force. The German commanders don't yet realize how fragmented the American positions are. At 11:30 a.m., 5 hours after H-hour, the beach is still under intermittent fire. German artillery, 15 cm Schwer Feldhaubitze 18 howitzers, positioned 3 to 5 miles inland, fire on pre-registered coordinates. The guns have a range of 14,600 yards and fire 95-pound shells. The crews don't need to see the beach. They have firing tables prepared during months of occupation. They fire on schedule, 6-round salvos every 8 to 10 minutes. The shells fall into the tidal zone, the seawall, and the bluff access points. Casualty collection points are established behind the seawall at 4 locations. Medics work without morphine. Most aid kits were lost in the water or are waterlogged and unusable. They use sulfanilamide powder on wounds to prevent infection. They tie tourniquets with strips of cloth. They mark foreheads with blood type using grease pencils. The wounded wait for landing craft to evacuate them. Some wait 6 hours. Some wait until nightfall. Some die waiting. Navy corpsmen and Army medics work together. The Navy corpsmen, attached to the Army for the invasion, are trained in trauma care but have no surgical capability. Sucking chest wounds are packed with gauze. Abdominal wounds are covered and left alone. Nothing can be done on the beach. Fractured limbs are splinted with rifles or entrenching tools. Men with head wounds are sedated if morphine is available. or they scream until they pass out. One medic, Technician 5th Grade Thomas Kenny, 16th Infantry, works for 11 straight hours on Easy Red Beach. He treats 47 wounded men. He runs out of bandages by 9:00 a.m. and uses torn shirts and pants. He runs out of sulfanilamide by 10:00 a.m. and cleans wounds with seawater. He saves 32 men who would have bled out. He's awarded the Silver Star. He's 22 years old. By the end of June 6, 1944, American casualties on Omaha Beach total approximately 2,400 men. This number includes killed, wounded, missing, and captured. The breakdown by category: approximately 1,000 killed, 1,300 wounded, 100 missing or captured. Records vary across sources. Some after-action reports cite 2,000 total, others cite 3,000. The confusion is due to unit disintegration. Men landed in the wrong sectors. Companies intermingled. Rosters were lost or destroyed. Some men were listed as missing and later turned up alive. Some men listed as wounded died later and were reclassified. The 1st Infantry Division lost 1,190 men on June 6 across all its units. The 29th Infantry Division lost approximately 1,000 men. The 5th Ranger Battalion lost 23 killed, 89 wounded. Engineers lost the highest percentage, 41% casualties among assault engineers in the first wave. The 146th Engineer Combat Battalion lost 47 men killed and wounded out of 108. German casualties on Omaha Beach are harder to document. The 352nd Infantry Division's War Diary, Kriegstagebuch, records heavy losses but does not provide specific numbers. Post-war interrogations of surviving German officers suggest that by nightfall on June 6, the division had lost approximately 1,200 men killed, wounded, or missing, about 20% of its starting strength. Widerstandsonist 62 lost 100% of its garrison, 31 men killed or captured. Widerstandsonist 71 lost 18 men. Other positions withdrew intact when their ammunition ran out, or when American forces bypassed them. At 2:00 p.m., Generalleutnant Dietrich Krayes, 51 years old, commander of the 352nd Infantry Division, sits in his command post at the Château de Formigny, 4 miles south of Omaha Beach. He receives reports by field telephone and motorcycle courier. The reports are contradictory. Some say the Americans have been stopped at the waterline. Some say Americans are 2 kilometers inland. One report says American tanks are approaching Colville. Another says no American tanks have been seen. Krayes has been a soldier for 32 years. He fought in World War I as a lieutenant. He commanded a regiment in Poland in 1939 and in France in 1940. He knows what a successful defense looks like. This is not it. He orders a counterattack. 2 companies from the 916th Grenadier Regiment, approximately 240 men, supported by 2 Stu GIII assault guns, Sturmgeschütz III Ausf. G tracked vehicles mounting 75 guns. The Stu GS have 80 of frontal armor and can kill any American tank at 1,500 yards. The infantry will advance on foot. The Stu GS will provide fire support. The objective: drive the Americans back to the bluffs and restore the coastal defense line. The counterattack moves forward at 2:30 p.m. The Germans advance through bocage terrain, which favors defense. But the Americans don't have a defense line. They have scattered strong points. The German column moves into a gap between 2 American positions. They advance 800 yards without contact. At 3:00 p.m., they encounter Lieutenant Spaulding's group at the Stone Farmhouse. The Germans outnumber Spaulding's force 3-1. 240 versus 32. But Spaulding has the farmhouse, stone walls 18 inches thick, roof blown off by naval gunfire but walls intact. He has fields of fire across 200 yards of open pasture. He has one Browning automatic rifle, 16 M1 Garands, 2 M1 carbines, and one Browning M19 19.30 caliber machine gun salvaged from a wrecked half-track. The German infantry advance across the pasture in a skirmish line. The Stu-GS sit 500 yards back, firing high-explosive shells at the farmhouse. The shells blow holes in the walls but don't collapse them. American riflemen fire from windows and breaches. Garands fire as fast as triggers are pulled. The bar gunner, Private First Class Leo Beliveau, fires 120 rounds in 3 minutes and kills 7 Germans. The M1919 machine gun fires in short bursts to conserve ammunition. The Germans reach the farmhouse perimeter, 50 yards out before they break. They take 34 casualties, 19 killed, 15 wounded. The survivors fall back to a hedgerow 200 yards south and dig in. Spaulding's force takes 3 killed, 7 wounded. They hold the farmhouse. At 3:45 p.m., one of the Stu-GII assault guns is hit by naval gunfire. USS Harding, a destroyer 4,000 yards offshore, receives a fire mission from a shore fire control party attached to the 1st Infantry Division. The coordinates are called in by Lieutenant Kenneth Norton, forward observer, using an SCR-284 radio. Harding fires 12 rounds of 5-inch high explosive. The first salvo misses by 100 yards. The second salvo misses by 50 yards. The third salvo hits both Stu-GS. One vehicle brews up, ammunition detonates, turret flies off. The other is immobilized with track damage. Crew bails out. The German counterattack ends. Generalleutnant Krayas receives the failure report at 4:30 p.m. He has no more reserves. He orders his units to hold their positions and wait for reinforcements from higher command. Those reinforcements never arrive. The German High Command believes the main invasion is at Pas-de-Calais, 200 miles northeast. Normandy is considered a diversion. At 8:00 p.m., as the light turns golden over Normandy, the beach is still chaos but organized chaos. Landing craft unload directly onto the sand. Cranes are not yet ashore, so vehicles drive off ramps into 3 feet of water. Some stall. Engineers push them clear with bulldozers. Bodies lie in rows above the high water mark, covered with shelter halves and ponchos. Graves registration teams tag them with names when possible, grid coordinates when not. Some bodies have no identification, dog tags lost, uniforms burned, faces unrecognizable. They are listed as unknown. Inland, American units dig foxholes in hedgerows and fields. No one knows where the front line is. Some units are 2 miles inland. Others are still 500 yards from the beach. Gaps exist everywhere. Battalion commanders don't know where their companies are. Company commanders don't know where their platoons are. Platoon leaders count heads and find half their men missing, killed, wounded, or separated during the chaos. At 9:00 p.m., Brigadier General Norman Cota sits in a stone barn outside the village of Louviers, 2,000 yards inland. He's commandeered the barn as a temporary command post. He has approximately 600 men with him, Rangers, infantry from the 29th Division, engineers and stragglers from other units. He has 2 working radios. Ammunition is low, 30 rounds per rifleman, 6 belts per machine gun, no mortar rounds, no artillery support. He writes a report by flashlight on the back of a ration box. The report lists his position, his strength, and his needs: ammo, medical supplies, and tank support. He sends the report with a runner, Private First Class Albert Garcia, age 20, from Texas. Garcia makes it to the beach, finds a jeep heading back inland, and returns with the response at 11:00 p.m. No tanks available, ammunition will come at first light, medical supplies en route. At 11:15 p.m., a jeep with a trailer full of plasma bottles, bandages, and morphine syringes arrives. The driver is a medic, Private Harold Miller, 19 years old, from Ohio. Miller makes the trip 3 more times that night, each time under intermittent mortar fire. He delivers 400 pounds of medical supplies. He's awarded the Bronze Star. At 10:30 p.m., German patrols infiltrate American lines. Small groups, 4 to 6 men, move through gaps and probe positions. They're looking for weak points, unit boundaries, and command posts. Sentries fire at sounds. Passwords are shouted in the dark. Flash and thunder, the D-Day code words. Some Germans know the passwords. They captured American prisoners during the day and extracted the information. Friendly fire kills at least 11 Americans after dark. One entire squad from the 115th Infantry fires on another squad from the same company. 3 men killed, 5 wounded before officers stopped the shooting. By midnight, American forces on Omaha Beach hold a lodgment 1.5 miles deep and 5 miles wide. It is not the objective. The D-Day plan called for a lodgment 10 miles deep, with forward elements reaching the town of St. Lo, 20 miles inland. None of that happened, but the Americans are ashore, and they are not leaving. The numbers tell part of the story. 34,250 men landed on Omaha Beach on June 6, 1944. 2,400 became casualties, killed, wounded, missing. That's a 7% loss rate for the day. Compared to other amphibious assaults in history, that's moderate. Gallipoli in 1915, 20% casualties on the first day. Tarawa in 1943, 17% casualties. Deep in 1942, 68% casualties. But aggregate numbers hide the reality. The first wave, 8 companies, approximately 1,450 men, took 30% to 96% casualties depending on sector. Company A, 116th Infantry, 96% casualties in 7 minutes. Company E, 16th Infantry, 45% casualties in 15 minutes. Company F, 16th Infantry, 33% casualties in the first hour. The men who landed at 6:30 a.m. absorbed the worst. The men who landed at 7:00 a.m. had more cover, smoke from burning vehicles, grass fires on the bluffs, and suppressed German positions. The men who landed at 8:00 a.m. walked into a gunfight but not a slaughter. Equipment losses: 26 artillery pieces sunk or destroyed before reaching shore. 50 tanks lost, most sunk at sea, others destroyed on the beach. 10 bulldozers destroyed by artillery or mines. Over 2,000 rifles and carbines lost in the water or damaged beyond repair. Approximately 60% of radios non-functional. 90% of Bangalore torpedoes expended or destroyed in the first hour. 50% of medical supplies lost in the water. The Germans lost defensive coherence. By 4:00 p.m., communication between strongpoints was cut, telephone wires severed by shelling, runners killed by artillery. By 6:00 p.m., ammunition stocks in forward positions were critically low. MG-42 belts expended, mortar rounds gone, rifle ammunition down to 20 rounds per man. Resupply from inland depots required moving through American artillery fire. Few supply runs succeeded. By nightfall, German positions were isolated and unsupported. The duel was not won by superior tactics or equipment. It was won by accumulation. Enough men reached the bluffs. Enough leaders stayed alive. Enough explosives made it through. Enough naval gunfire suppressed enough positions. The margin was thin. If the tide had been higher, exposing fewer obstacles, more boats would have broached. If the sea had been rougher, more men would have drowned. If the German reinforcements, the 352nd Division, had arrived 1 week earlier, the defenses would have been impenetrable. By June 7th at 8:00 a.m., the beachhead is 3 miles deep. Engineers have cleared and widened 6 vehicle routes off the beach. Trucks, tanks, half-tracks, and artillery pieces move inland in convoys. Traffic control points are established at each draw exit. Military police direct traffic. Vehicles move bumper to bumper. German artillery still targets the draws intermittently, but counter-battery fire from American artillery and naval guns suppresses most positions. By June 12th, American forces link Omaha Beach with Utah Beach to the west and British Gold Beach to the east. The Normandy lodgment becomes a continuous front 60 miles wide. Over 326,000 men, 54,000 vehicles, and 104,000 tons of supplies have landed across all 5 beaches. The bocage fighting begins, slow, grinding combat through hedgerow country. It will take 7 weeks to break out. By July 25th, Operation Cobra, the breakout offensive, begins. American forces punch through German lines south of St. Lo and race into Brittany and toward Paris. Paris is liberated on August 25th. The German army in France collapses. By September, Allied forces are on the German border. Germany surrenders on May 8, 1945. Omaha Beach becomes a symbol, the worst American losses on D-Day, the closest the invasion came to failure. But also proof of endurance, the ability to take catastrophic damage and keep moving. Brigadier General Norman Cota receives the Distinguished Service Cross for actions on June 6, 1944. The citation reads, "His courage and leadership were an inspiration to all who observed him. He is promoted to Major General in August 1944 and commands the 28th Infantry Division through the Battle of Huichin Forest and the Battle of the Bulge. He retires in 1946 with the rank of Major General. He dies on October 4, 1971, at age 78, in Philadelphia. The 5th Ranger Battalion is awarded a Presidential Unit Citation for Omaha Beach. Staff Sergeant William Courtney survives his wounds, returns to duty in August 1944, and fights through France and Germany. He receives the Silver Star and the Purple Heart. He survives the war, returns to Ohio, and works as a factory foreman. He dies in 1989 at age 69. Company A, 116th Infantry Regiment, the Bedford Boys, loses 19 men killed on June 6 from the town of Bedford, Virginia, population 3,200. It is the highest per capita loss of any American community on D-Day. The town never recovers its pre-war population. A national D-Day memorial is built in Bedford and dedicated on June 6, 2001. The Normandy American Cemetery overlooks Omaha Beach. 9,387 American dead are buried there. White marble crosses and stars of David in perfect rows. The cemetery covers 172 acres. On clear days, you can see the bluffs from the graves. Military historians argue over Omaha Beach. Some say it was a failure of intelligence. The 352nd Infantry Division should have been detected. Aerial reconnaissance photographed the beach defenses weakly, but analysts couldn't distinguish between the 716th Static Division and the 352nd Infantry Division. The failure was interpretive, not photographic. Some say it was a failure of planning. Launching DD tanks 6,000 yards offshore in force 3 Cs was negligent. The Navy coxswains were told to stay outside the obstacle belt to avoid mines, but this guaranteed the tanks would sink. A British officer observing the launch reportedly said, "You're going to drown them all." Some say it was a failure of bombardment. The Air Force dropped 13,000 bombs and hit nothing. The Navy fired 2,876 tons of shells and destroyed only 2 pillboxes. Post-war analysis showed that direct hits on reinforced concrete required at least 14-inch shells at flat trajectory or 2,000-pound bombs. The bombers carried 500-pound bombs. Most Navy guns were 5-inch or 6-inch. Only the battleships had the weight, and they fired from 12,000 yards, too far for precision. All of these are true, but the question is not why it went wrong. The question is why it didn't collapse. At 7:00 a.m., the assault was failing by every measurable metric. Casualties exceeded 50% in lead units. Armor support was absent. Engineers were suppressed. Communication was broken. The plan was dead. And yet men kept moving, not because of orders. Most officers were dead or out of contact, not because of training. Training does not cover 96% casualties. They moved because the men next to them moved, because leaders like Coda and Taylor walked upright under fire, because staying still was certain death and moving forward was only probable death. This is not heroism in the cinematic sense. This is the math of survival under fire. When every option is bad, you choose the option that gives the smallest chance of dying. On Omaha Beach, that option was forward. By 6:00 p.m. On June 6, 1944, that math had carried 34,000 men off a beach that should have been their grave. The Germans called it impossible. The Americans called it Omaha.